Good afternoon. Everybody having a good time?
Absolutely.
Love your place. Let's get back. I'm happy to be here because I love it here as well. But, you got to do the guitar tour too? Or? Well, my name is Brian Hearne. Obviously, you know, name's on the sign. I've been around this pretty much my entire life. My father started into wood back in the early 1980s. He would tell you this all began by mistake. He was he started off as a logger, and with an ad in fine woodworking, it kind of turned into this. In the 80s and the 90s, he was at a different location. We bought this property in 1997. The property that you see was an old 18th century farm. The thing to keep in mind is the only original bits to this property is the house there. That's where I live at. It's an old colonial house built around 1760. There was this building with the stone walls. There was no functional roof to it. We had the barn here. That was the only building that was useful to my father when he started the business. When he moved over from Lancaster County, he renovated that into basically our retail space, which to this day it's our main retail space. Which by next year that's going to change, which I'll show you later on. And out back there was a couple other small sheds that absolutely had no use. And this shed that we should probably tear down is original as well. The guys that work for us just presented my father with a aerial photograph of the property from the 1974 somewhere about. If you're curious and you go in the office, there's actually a really cool photograph of what this place used to look like. But what I'm getting at, anything outside of that, we basically have built ourselves over the last I don't know, 25 years at this point. And so we've obviously have grown a lot over the years. Our business is obviously selling hardwoods and softwoods, if you haven't figured that out yet. But I think we're a little bit more than that and unique compared to most places where you might go buy wood. And I think what makes us different is that we're one of the few operations in the world that we go hand select the material that we have at the source. And lots of times, I'd say the majority of the time, we're actually buying logs instead of lumber. And the reason we do that is we pride ourselves on being sawyers and owning some of the nicest sawmills in the world. It gives us the ability to custom cut that material into whatever we decide that we want to cut that material into. And depending on who the customer is and what they might do with the material, every log that we get, it might be treated a little bit differently. So we consider ourselves to be especially timber merchants, and we look at it that way because the stuff we deal we feel is special, and it gets cut differently depending on what we might buy. So you know, it's not uncommon for, you know, if you came in and said, you know, where's Brian at? I might be in Hawaii buying koa, or you know, a lot of people have been asking me if I've been traveling. My last trip, I just got back from Alaska last week, where I was there for 2 weeks. We have a little property on Prince of Wales Island where we source spruce logs for guitar tops. We do a lot in Central America. One of the regions that I go to, used to go to quite frequently, was Australia to buy timber. My dad does a lot of traveling as well, and it seems like he has his places that he goes to and the places that I go to, and we generally don't go back and forth. Like, I have my specialty areas and he has his specialty areas, and somehow I managed to get Hawaii and Australia and Alaska. So I think I'm doing. I think I got the better end of the deal. But he gets to go to some pretty cool places as well. I mean, he just got back from Italy, and I know what his trips looks like. It's like going to vineyards and eating good food and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, so we go all over the place to basically do what you guys are doing today, which is try to find a really nice piece of, well, in my case, a nice log that someday is going to be turned into a really special piece of timber. And as a woodworker myself, I always like to think about it that, I go try to buy stuff that I'd want to buy, and then hoping that what I like is what you like, and that when we cut it up, it's going to be something that hopefully you guys want to buy from us, because after all, if you guys don't like what we have here, then we're not going to be able to do what we do. So that's where it all begins. We basically have a process where I get the logs at the source. A lot of the times people ask me, like, how does this all work? Where you buy a log, you then have to figure out how to get. Sometimes, like we had a spruce log come in this year that weighed 44,000 pounds. How do you get something that weighs 44,000 pounds from Alaska to Pennsylvania? What does that look like? So we then logistically have to figure out how to get 44,000 pound log into a sea container. And you probably see these sea containers going down the highway, and you sometimes, well, at least I do, because we move a lot of sea containers. Sometimes I think, like, what's inside of there? Well, in some cases it might be my 44,000 pound spruce log inside of that sea container, and then that process can be months. Like when I buy logs in Tasmania, I go look at the logs, buy logs, put them in the container, and then you almost forget about it, and 4 months later it shows up at your doorstep. And then from there, which you'll see later on, we then figure out which sawmill that we want to use to basically get the best yield or the best aesthetics out of that tree. I like to think that we're stewards of what we do. You have this tree that's 400 years old. We pride ourselves on that we want to basically get the best timber that we possibly can out of that. And that's one of the reasons that we prefer buying logs than lumber, because we feel that we're really, really good at what we do, and we'd rather cut it than let somebody else cut our logs. Then we pick which mill is going to do the best job, and then depending on what the species is or the use of the material, the customer, the process could be, it goes from log to you being able to buy it in 1 month. But if you're into these big tables where the tabletop is a 5 foot wide slab and it's 4 inches thick, we cut the board and we almost have to forget about it, where it might not be available to you for 4 or 5 years. So it just depends on why or who the customer's going to be on what we're cutting. And I think that's what makes one of the many things that makes this job so enjoyable is we could talk for days about what we do here, is that every species of wood we deal in, every region we go to, every customer we work with, everything is always different. And yeah. Any questions before we start moving along? I mean, this tour goes on a lot better if I try to cater to what you want to know.
Talk to your revenue. Who do you sell to? Like construction people, designers, or like, do you have folks?
Yeah. To answer the question, over the last 10 years, a lot of the material that we do goes into musical instrument parts. That has been an extremely fast-growing part of our business, and over the last couple of years, that part of the business fluctuates anywhere from like 40 to almost half of what we sell here. And the reason for that is we deal a lot of timber that is really, really rare and expensive. And the musical instrument guys like to use the best wood on the planet for their guitars. And look at a guitar, there's not a whole lot of wood in there. So some of the most expensive stuff we have, it's a lot easier for them to afford that sort of material. But you know, when my dad started, he started with an ad in fine woodworking, and for probably the first 30 years, this business was really set up to provide wood to the furniture maker. And as a furniture maker myself, that's still to this day my passion with what we do, is buying wood that I see that's going to end up ultimately in furniture. And then outside of furniture, we do a lot of really high-end homes in this country, like the ones you read about in newspapers. You know, just a couple of years ago, I saw an article in the U.S. Today about the most expensive piece of real estate ever sold in this country, and now one of the most expensive properties in this country up for sale, and we provided the wood for the floors in that penthouse. And generally 2 to 3 times a year we get a call to do custom cut jobs for basically very wealthy billionaires. Like not like your low class.
Just say
billionaires, yes.
Yeah. And it's kind of redundant.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm getting at is not, you know, we're now yeah, first off, there's no such thing as a struggling billionaire. Yeah, and that has been a key to our success here is you know, when the economy goes like this, at the end of the day, the rich still are rich, right? But the billionaires that I'm talking about are like the top 10. The Zuckerbergs and the Ellison, and you know, and we've done those projects. And the reason we get those projects is we're one of the places that, you know, the architect or the designer will call, and they'll call all these different places, and they'll hear, oh, that's impossible, we can't do that. And if we get the phone call, I generally will say, okay, well, if we're going to do this, first off, it's probably going to take a lot of time. Second off, it's not easy. We're going to have probably a huge waste factor. And 3, we're talking lots of money. And, you know, all the boxes checked, you know, usually with those people, it's like money's not the object. It's just a matter of whether they have the time. And, you know, some of these projects, they take, like the job I was talking about that was the most expensive, that was like a 4 or 5 year project. As far as the architects designing what they do, and then they go source material and all that. So, but I think that one of the things that keeps it interesting around here is, I mean, well, we got 50, 60 people here, is if I went right down the road, you know, and asked every single one of you, like, what are you doing with the wood that you buy from us, probably every single one of you would have a different project or a different use of what you see in the wood that's here. And we've been doing this long enough that, I mean, I know, like, you can almost build anything out of wood. Wood is a great fiber or material to build stuff out of. It's pretty forgiving and pretty easy to mold into something where, like, you know, that's why not everything's built from steel. I mean, think about the tools you need to buy to work steel all day long. So, any other questions before we get walking around? So that is a koa tree. And that koa only comes from Hawaii. And my dad likes to call this piece of wood the tree that lost its way. And you know, koa is a very special, beautiful timber from a very special resource and special place. Like I said, it only comes from Hawaii. It only grows on the side of well, it grows all throughout Hawaii, but where it grows best is on the sides of the volcanoes on the Big Island. And in my opinion, out of all the places that I travel, I think the koa forests are my favorite because they're so unique, and that these trees will do things that you don't even think are possible, as far as how they grow.
Does it grow that big? Has it shade type thing?
The tree is like the ultimate survivor. Like, so probably what happened here was this tree fell over, and it's in a forest, and it doesn't want to die, and it's like looking for like, okay, where's there a spot in the canopy where I can, find sunlight, and it just twists and it's like, oh, there's sunlight over there, I'm going that way, and then maybe a tree like falls in its way, and it's like, oh, there's no sunlight over there, now I gotta go that way, and that's why sometimes you,
What's the name of the tree then?
Koa, K-O-A.
Oh, you have to see the next one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful timber. It's rare in the sense that the resource is small. It's not rare because the species is endangered. There was an article in National Geographic, and they actually put numbers behind it. And I think there's something like 400,000 acres in the world of area that koa trees can grow in. 400,000 acres sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about supplying the whole entire world, it's not a whole lot. So, anything else before? Okay, so they only gave me an hour to talk to you guys today. It's a big property, and I would like to kind of try to cover the basics and show you as much of the property as I can. So we're going to do a bit of walking, and we're going to head to the front building first, and if you guys have any questions, just ask them as we're going, and I'll try to fill you in with everything as we get there. Okay?
Is it in your inventory someplace?
Yeah, it is. Look, a lot of that stuff you're talking about, the whole stuff out back is stuff that maybe was, wow, there's something there, And in this day and age of epoxy and all that, you can do some pretty cool stuff with wood that's pretty raw. Okay. And we've always kind of referred to this as like our main lumber warehouse. And basically it is our biggest building as far as it has the most amount of dry wood that is available to be built into something today. And what you're looking at is stuff that basically either my father or I probably bought a log somewhere in the world, had it shipped in one of those sea containers I was telling you about. It came here. We then put it on one of our sawmills, cut it into what we thought was the best dimensions to cut it into, or in the best orientation to cut it into. Then we put it through a air drying process, which we have another building for wood that's not ready to be used today, to let it sit. And like I said, if it's big, thick slabs, that process could have been 4 or 5 years to get that wood ready to sell to the customer. Once it sat for that long, we would then put it through a kiln to get it dry for a couple different reasons. One, you want the wood to be dry that you're working on, and two, as you can imagine, trees or lumber or logs, they can get critters. And here we have a couple different kilns. One is a vacuum kiln that gets up to about 165 degrees with no air. And as you can imagine, if I put wood in that kiln, there isn't an insect on this planet that's going to survive that process. Once that wood has been dried, we then store it in a building like this. Like I said, this is the biggest one that we have at the moment. And voila, now you have stuff that can be used for furniture, guitars, really anything that you can dream up, and a selection of stuff that is from all over the planet. The stuff that I'm standing at right here, that's Bubinga from the west coast of Africa. I see a pile there that is labeled Koa, which, as I told you, that's from Hawaii. Obviously, Hawaii and Africa are completely different places on this globe. Somewhere here, there's going to be some Tasmanian blackwood. Tasmania and Western Australia, I think so far in the places that I travel to, I think that if I started digging a hole right here, I'd probably come out at Tasmania on the other side of the planet, because it feels like that's the opposite side of the planet if you've ever traveled there. I don't know, has anybody been to Tasmania in this room? Hey, there we go. Long way away, isn't it? How long did it take you to get there?
He was 18 when he left.
It's a long trip.
One-way trip.
Yeah, the fastest I've ever gotten to Tasmania was about 40 hours of nonstop travel. I'm sure you could get there if you own your own jet, but I don't. So, and Western Australia, you know, I usually, you know, always include that as part of my tour. And somebody always asks me, so what is the furthest place that you ever traveled to, or the longest? And to date, my record's like 52 hours to somewhere in Western Australia, nonstop. So, long way away from here. But basically, what you're looking at is stuff from all around the world.
When you had a choice, what would be your top 3 woods in here that you only could keep 3 of them?
That's a tough question. I do a lot of stuff in koa. I love koa. If you've seen the stuff that I build, it really is a wood that works well for what I design. And the reason koa works well for me is my favorite koa is stuff that's not straight. You know, like that stump out in front of the office, it can grow like in a circle. And I like really crooked wood, because if you look at the furniture I build, everything in my style of furniture, there's no straight lines in it. So it works well with what I build. So koa would have to be on my short list. I love rosewood. It's just incredible timber for a lot of different reasons. And then after that, I mean, a third would be almost impossible for me to pick. And that kind of brings me to a point that I haven't brought up yet that I should point out is we deal with a lot of different types of wood here that are very, very common too. Like, you know, there's walnut right here. I mean, probably a lot of you guys have walnut trees growing in your backyard, or, you know, there's some cherry right there, another common tree. And there's a lot of maple out right now, another thing that we're all familiar with, right? And what we really try to do here when it comes to finding wood that, say, like a guitar builder wants, or say the best furniture makers in the world that want to build like something for a special client, or what a billionaire might want, is we try to find special trees. And the beauty of wood or trees, if you know what you're looking at when you're looking at a tree, is you can find something absolutely spectacular in almost any of the species that we carry. I mean, some of the, you know, way I would like to look at that question is like, what's like your 5 or 3 most favorite trees you've ever seen in your life that you'd want to work in? And, you know, and like in that case, I might include walnut into the list, because I mean, when walnut's at its best, I mean, it can be absolutely incredible. When cherry's at its best, it can be incredible. Maple, I mean, some of the finest guitars in the world are built out of maple. So, you know, in this building, like some of the stuff that I would go want to build my next project on, it might not be koa or rosewood. It might be something I remember when we bought the log and we cut the log open and we just went, wow, you know, and then you always just remember that and have that in the back of your mind where it's like, I'd like to build something out someday. Because lots of times when I design furniture, the process for me is I actually don't design the piece of furniture until I actually go look at the wood. And then the wood tells me what that design is going to be, if that makes sense. That's at least how I approach it. Because if I have what I find is if I design first and I draw it up and I've set boundaries of what that design is, then I walk out and it's like, oh, well, that won't work and that won't work and that won't work, because all of a sudden the design I might have will eliminate all these things, which in some cases is a blessing because then I don't sit there and think about what I want to build for the next 6 months because there's so many great options in here. So, what's that?
You sell the furniture or
I just do it for fun for myself, generally.
you have like a book or?
Not really.
No.
It's floating around here. There's some
Okay.
pieces. There's like,
You're not on the website of the company though.
not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not like social. I don't know how big. Like the company's good at social media, but I'm not a social media guy. But it's like some of my earlier pieces you can see here, like in the office, the big desk that you see when you walk in. I built that like 18 years ago. There's a table upstairs that I built. A lot of the stuff that's in the office,
You're just doing it for fun.
yeah, we're not making a living. I just, like I said earlier, I grew up around this. I mean, sawdust is in the blood. I mean, my dad started this when I was about 5 years old, so I've always been around wood. But when I was 5 and 10, I didn't want to do this for a living. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I mean, I gave it hell. I got a baseball scholarship and went to Villanova and got pretty close to playing minor league baseball and all that. I could have went and played minor league baseball. But I always realized that my dad had something really special going on here. And when I decided that maybe wood would be a good fallback plan, I did the business school at Villanova. And when I decided that I was going to do this instead of the baseball, it was like, if I'm going to do this the rest of my life, like the perk of doing this is to be able to take the wood and do something with it. So ever since then, I've just been playing with wood. And it's just, I mean, I've always maintained it's like, if I had to do it for a living, I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do. I mean, I always I find it amazing that people can come buy wood from us and make a living doing it. Like, it's not an easy way to make a living. But what I found is that the people that do it for a living or do it for hobby, they really, really like it. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they love it.
Yeah, the hobby side.
And that's what makes this job so great is generally that people come to see us, they're in a great mood. They got a project. They got a project that they have in mind, and at least for me, like the most exciting part of the whole project is like right at the beginning and when it's done. Everywhere in the middle is where it gets difficult, but like in the beginning, you got this great idea in your head, and you're trying to find that piece of wood that's going to make your dream come true. And I get you guys like in that same mentality every single day, so it's easy to have a good day when you're working with somebody who's excited about what they're going to build, right? So.
When you're looking at a tree, besides the facts of size and distance, what do you look for to determine whether you really
Oh
want it?
man, how long do we have? That's a very open-ended question, at least from the way I understand all that.
That's my thing.
So we could probably all agree if you walked up to a tree that looked like that, you might say, wow, that's pretty cool. Sometimes it's like that. Other times it's just lots of experience to understand from doing it for years and years and years and spending years and years not only buying logs, but when the log gets here, watching it get cut, you start to get an understanding of the subtleties of the tree or the log to what it's going to look like inside. And because we understand that, it has led to a lot of success in what we do, because I feel like I'm very good at what I do, and I am one of those guys who can look at like 1,000 logs, and I just know what's inside of it. That like if I'm looking for that pattern or like burl pattern or figure or something like that, I know what to look for to find that, and you just keep looking until you find that. And so I have a pretty good understanding of what's inside of a log. Now, that being said, Mother Nature can be pretty cruel too. And trees and logs and everything are definitely full of surprises. And that's one of the beauties of all this is I'll be learning until I die about, woodworking or what's inside of a log or a tree. But it's also you got to understand who your customer is, because maybe what I want's not what you want. At the end of the day, if I'm only buying for myself, I'm out of business a long time ago. Because we weren't born rich here. We do have to sell what we buy. So the trick is understanding who your customer is, and then understanding how to take what you buy and produce it to what they want. So when I'm looking at stuff, I generally have an idea, first off, who am I going to sell that to? And then I know also when I get that material to Pennsylvania, how we need to process it to get it to the point when it comes into their shop, they're able to do exactly what they want to do with it. And the biggie the big one where it was difficult to achieve, but we understand how to do it, is the guitar industry. Is they're very, very specific on what they need and all that. And not every tree is going to be a great guitar tree, but and it's not easy to get to the point of what they need, but we understand how to get there. So you must be referring to the wood that's called Purple Heart, or correct? Yeah, so there's a wood that we sell as Purple Heart, and that actually is a very common tree that grows from, I guess you could probably find Purple Heart trees in Mexico, and then it goes all the way down to South America. That's a very good question. I'm actually not the one guy that buys that. That'd be Ed here. My guess is it's actually coming from South America. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of our stuff's coming from South America. Yes, sir.
Your inventory is very diverse, of course.
Yes.
Is it driven more by demand, what the customers ask for, or from contacts throughout the world, or both?
Both. So that's a good question. Obviously, we try to buy stuff that we know that people are going to want to buy, and it's always nice when you're buying stuff that customers are going to buy fairly immediately. And that's a big part of what we do, and a lot of stuff we buy is trying to get stuff that can be sort of material that customers are buying on a regular basis, and where we don't have, I hate using the word of inventory turnover, but, where we're turning it over and that sort of thing. Now, that being said, we also do a lot of speculative buying. I had a finance degree at Villanova, and I always like to compare what we do to the finance market, where I like to look at all of this as like a portfolio. And what I try to buy is stuff that I know that is only appreciating in value, so that we can move away from like an inventory turnover model and more of a cash flow model, and have stuff that if I don't sell it today, they're not making a whole lot more of it, that in 10 years from now it'll only be worth, like, it's growing in value. The Cocobolo?
Different design. Coca what?
Cocobolo, so that's from Nicaragua. That particular piece would be from Nicaragua. So we have a small sawmill property in Nicaragua as well, and that's why I'm very familiar with where that came from.
Over there, you spoke about being the steward of a 400-year-old tree, which I greatly respect. It's just that a mindset. You have some huge stumps in the back, massive. When you speculate on how old something like that would be.
Well, back to what species we're talking about. Some of those could be 40 years old.
That's awful.
Yeah, and something that's slow growing like spruce could be 600 years old.
What would grow big in 40 years?
A lot of the West Coast would grow extremely fast. All of it out in California grows like 2 inches per year. I mean, it's crazy how fast this stuff grows. The bigger color slashes are surprisingly not that old, because color, if you've been to Hawaii, it's a good place to be as far as if you're a tree, because you get sunlight all year long, and the soil's so rich there, and they get plenty of rain. 3 gradients for the tree as well. So, One of the stumps is a very well-known tree out there. I don't know if it's the one you're talking about, but I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the London Grove oak. Anybody familiar with the London Grove oak? Yes. We processed the London Grove oak. That was a tree that was a very, in my opinion, a very special tree, and that it was a tree that we would take people to because it was just the most magnificent tree you'd ever see in your life. And the hope was that that tree was going to grow forever. And unfortunately, it fell over. And when it fell over, we did the processing of the tree for the Friends meeting over there in New London.
I think I read somewhere where like you were doing like 2 or 3 big blades cutting it.
It was full of concrete. Yeah, we offered that if the Friends meeting, if they wanted to have that tree processed, that we would do it on our dollar and let them keep the wood for themselves. And my dad and I just absolutely loved that tree. Like the musicians that are playing here, I took them to the tree like 6 months beforehand. It was just a place, you go get your photo taken. You can actually go on the internet and there's photographs of people standing next to that tree like 80 years ago. Very known tree. And, we felt that being a steward or something like that, we had to sometimes there's logs here. You try to always do your best job, but you don't give them you don't spend days trying to cut them. You try to get them cut as fast as possible. And that was a tree that was like, no matter what, we got to make sure we do a good job with it. And unfortunately, as soon as we started cutting in that thing, somebody had the brilliant idea to just keep putting concrete in it for years and years and years. And we hit a little bit of concrete, and we're like, hopefully this is isolated. We spent a week digging concrete out of that tree as we were cutting. I mean, we destroyed more than 3 blades for sure. I mean, we destroyed thousands of dollars worth of blades. but we owed it to the tree to do that.
Do you have any of it here?
It was just cut, and getting back to some of the stuff is cut like 4 inches thick, so it's going to be like 4 or 5 years until it's ready for somebody to use. So the answer to your question is yes, it's all sitting still here until well, not all. Some of the so the Friends meeting, or if you have interest in that sort of wood, you got to contact them. They're the stewards of it. We're not the stewards. And there were some people that go to that meeting, and just people that have talked to them, where some of that wood was already has like an owner of it or a user of it, and so some of the wood has already been kind of left, but the majority of it's still here. Okay, well, we should probably keep moving, or I'll never get you to the sawmill, and I'm sure at some point you're not going to want to hear me talk anymore anyway. My baseball coat. All right, keep going. All right, we're going in here.
He doesn't make any
So this is where really Hearne Hardwoods began. When my father bought this property, as I mentioned, it was just an old farm. And when he moved over here from Lancaster, this was really the only building that had any functionality to him. And in the very beginning, it was really the whole operation. We were basically standing in what used to be our office. There was lumber racks that he built, but then the lumber that he had, like the big warehouse where you saw the lumber stacks and all that, he used to have to store them right in the middle of this barn, which you can imagine, how difficult that was as far as trying to get stuff out for customers who might show up. I don't know. Do we have any original customers here, like pre-2000? Anybody in the room? So you saw like what that looked like? Yep. Anybody else?
Sales desk used to be right
Sales
there.
desk used to be that where I got out of Villanova. My office used to be up there. Every tour is different, and one of the things I forgot to mention up front is you might have noticed that we're in the process of building a very large building up front. That is definitely different than last year. And currently this is, our retail space for people to buy wood out of, but hopefully next year at this time, we're basically moving this space to up front. And I didn't give a tour of what that looks like, but we're in the process of building a new retail building, and it's going to replace this space. But this space is basically for the person who is building furniture, or they have a unique project where maybe they just need one board or two boards. Lots of times when I do my projects, I'll start it here, because in this tiny little space, you have some odds and ends of wood that are probably there's probably 100 species of wood in here that are from all over the planet. And this is a space that I go to get a lot of my inspiration for my projects. And that's what up front is going to be used for. But we're very excited about it, because we feel like we've outgrown this space, in the fact that we have so much cool wood here that's in lumber stacks that you just simply can't get to. And the best way to start a project is to be able to see what you can buy. And the space up front is going to allow us to put a lot more wood out on display. It's actually, the final square footage is like 17,000 square feet of space that's only going to be set up for the customer. It's going to be set up for the customer who wants to be able to look at the material that they want to buy. So we're pretty excited about it. And next year, hopefully, the tour I'll be giving you a tour of what that space looks like. So we got some pretty crazy ideas for up there.
Some good crashing. There's the sun.
You brought it out first. Should be a little stingy on that sun.
Well,
You got to spray it
it's
around.
been really short supply the last 3 weeks, you know it.
Got everybody? One more, two more. How
More.
much?
Window bank.
So this is a good spot on the property where you can kind of get a feel of the whole facility. We just walked by one of our kilns. That's behind that door there. That's your standard dehumidification kiln. You always get asked the question, like, where do you dry your wood at? That's one of them. That big building down there, we like to refer that to as our air dry building. So you might be curious to, where do you put wood that needs to sit around for a very long time to be ready for sale, like the wood that's up front or the barn. So all the wood that's in the drying process, all the really special stuff. Actually, I think probably the nicest timber that we have. When you're going to ask me what building has the best timber on the property as far as the stuff that I really like. A lot of stuff's there, it's not ready. In that building, we have a vacuum kiln. The vacuum kiln has it's a different way to dry wood that has advantages over dehumidification kiln. And basically, the main advantage is you can dry wood faster. So some stuff that we might dry for 3 or 4 years in a traditional sense, with the vacuum kiln, if you really wanted to, you could cut a log, put it in the vacuum kiln, and have it dry in a month. Just get it all in one melt. Sometimes that's appealing to us, sometimes it's not. That's why we still like it. This canopy building that we have over here, we have another kiln in, which is another dehumidification kiln. It's a building that we have wood that we store that's basically in the pipeline, either going into be cut into guitars or coming out to be cut into guitars. So a lot of guitar stuff is stored in that building. There's a steel building behind that. That's another lumber storage building. We have a lot of maple and oak in there. They're two of our top sellers. So we have a building that has where basically the majority of the wood is just a couple different species. Behind that building is one of our sawmills. It's our smallest sawmill, but the one that we use the most. This newer addition to it, to the left of it, is our resaw building for guitars. I don't know how many of you have done the guitar tour, but you would have seen on the guitar tour the different resaws we use to cut the really thin guitar veneers. Well, the saws that we do that with are down in that building. This here is our biggest sawmill that we have on the property. That mill has the capability to cut 8 feet wide by 45 feet long, which, as far as I know, that's pretty much the biggest one out there. It was something that we bought, and like the mill in the sawmill building, we did a lot of modifications to it to make us be able to do what it does. This blue contraption device, whatever you want to call it, in the back, it might ask, like, what is that? You know, anybody know what that is? Anybody have an idea to what that is?
Think about vacuum lift,
No?
slammer. No.
Any other guesses? That is a milling machine that you might ask, like, okay, if you cut a board that's 8 feet wide by 45 feet long, when it's dry, wood moves when it's dry, how do you flatten it? Well, that's the device that flattens it. So we can flatten, it's handy to be able to cut that big, but if you're going to cut that big, you might as well go flatten that big. Well, that'll flatten it. Yes.
What's your joiner?
That's our joiner.
How long is it in there? Flat piece.
Well, what it does is it has a 15-inch disc on it with a bunch of cutter heads on it.
The disc.
And that spins. So you put the slab in there, the slab might be twisted or cupped. You lay it down where you kind of shim it up to wherever you feel like you would mill the least amount of wood off of the slab would be. And then that machine, like the sawmill, rides on the track. And you just take these big long passes and you cut 15 inches of the wood away. And then you move it over 15 inches and you make another pass. And then you can actually replace the cutter heads on the bottom with sandpaper. If you want to sand it that way, you can sand it that way.
Well, you got 2 inches. Now, think about that. That was like a 50.
Yeah, it's a slow process, but I mean, if you're going to make a table that big, it's not going to be a fast process to begin with, right?
The kiln drying process.
Yeah.
Kind of like seeking recipes for different kinds of woods.
Oh yeah. So it's years of learning the hard way.
Right. So that stuff is, each mill has their own thing.
Yep.
Their own proprietary.
And then also, like we have, like I said, we have 3 different means of doing it. And just like the saws and everything else we own, depending on what type of wood we're talking about, who the customer is, it's like a different tool in the toolbox that one way might be better than another way. And through lots of learning the hard way or research, we might treat things differently from species to species. And the process is different on everything. I mean, our guys just went to a drying school where it was like almost like being a science class where they were learning about the structure of wood.
Right.
And for 3 days, all they talked about was drying wood.
So
you could write a book about drying wood.
So once you get to a percentage that you like, that it can sell it to the customer, that's going to go up and down.
Of course, wood's organic and it's seasonal, and it depends on like where you're using it. Like if you use the wood outside, what's going to happen to that wood? It's probably going to get wet, so it's going to take on a lot of moisture. Whereas if you have a house that's climate controlled, it's super like, or think of it like you have a house in Arizona versus Pennsylvania. That wood is either going to lose moisture or take on moisture, no matter what we dry it to. And that's all just part of the process of being a woodworker, to understand how wood's going to behave and build stuff with understanding those properties and how wood's going to behave as well.
And I guess the bottom line is the least checks you get it if possible. Is that the idea?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say the most important thing is to try to get the wood as stable as possible. And then the idea is to try to preserve the way the wood looked like when it came off the sawmill, which would be with the least amount of checks as possible. Then the other part of it is I see the boys, they have the log skidder out, which was my dad's very first piece of machinery they had back in the 80s as a logger. And you see they have the cable around the log. And when the logs come into Hearne Hardwoods, generally we will like unload the logs out of the sea containers back here or at the loading dock, but generally these days back here. And usually this whole area has a bunch of logs stacked up. That are the logs that we're about to cut. And then around back that you don't see here is the log yard. And then behind that, there's a property that we own called Kiora, which I don't know if anybody plays mini golf, but my wife owns the mini golf course over there. And we actually have 2 buildings up there that we use for Hearne Hardwoods. And one building up there is where we keep all of our veneer at. And then lastly, we're about to go into our, what we used to refer to as our sawmill building, but now it's more like our guitar building, because most of the day-to-day activity in there is guitar related and not sawing. We still use the sawmill in that building, but it's probably the saw that, well, where did I go? Between that saw and this saw, they're the ones that get used the least. We generally use this slab anymore for cutting really big slabs. We used to do it all in the sawmill building.
With the bandsaw?
Yeah. And the bandsaw in there, which I'll walk in and show you to end the tour, that saw came from the Philadelphia Navy Yard, and it's a magnificent saw. And we generally use that mainly for breaking logs open now. So we have a big log that's like 5 feet wide and we want to split it in half for some reason or another. That's a great mill for splitting that log in half with. And we do use it a lot in the guitar production of spruce, where we'll do what's quarter cutting. So we'll get a log in, and the first thing we'll do to the log is we'll break it into 4 quarters. And then when you take a 4-foot diameter log and you do it in those 4 quarters, now they're only 2 feet quarters. And now any of the mills here can cut that. And the mill down below is just a lot easier to run and a lot more accurate, and we can use much smaller blades that cost a lot less money. So that's why we're using that saw more than the big saw in there. Even though that saw in there could do the same exact job, but when you see the blade, you'll understand why we don't run that saw all the time. You can also imagine what the electric bill in that saw is too.
So veneer blades, they must be pretty special blades.
Well, it depends on what type of veneer you're talking about. So here at Hearne Hardwoods, we cut what is called sawn veneer. The sawn veneer is cut on a bandsaw, a traditional bandsaw blade. And generally, with what we do, we don't cut any further down than an 1/8 inch thickness. We could cut thinner, but if you go thinner than that, then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because anything under 1/8 of an inch, you can cut on a knife. And traditional veneer is usually cut on a, well, I shouldn't say traditional veneer, commodity veneer, or, the veneer that we see in our lives today. Most of the veneer that we see out there is cut on a knife. And the advantage of a knife is there's no sawdust, so you get a much higher yield. And you might ask, well, why don't you do all your stuff on a knife instead of a blade? Well, that 1/8 inch line that I'm talking about is kind of where the knife can't do it anymore. So when we're doing stuff that's the real veneer, which we do that, and we have probably over 1 million square feet of veneer inventory here, believe it or not. I actually outsource that to be done, because those veneer mills that do run are usually high production commodity mills. And to get into that business, there's about $10 to $20 million worth of equipment to do that properly. And there is mills out there that we can rent. So what we do is if we find logs that we want to have veneered, logs come here, and then I'll have them shipped out to be turned into veneer at a mill that has made that investment that'll allow me to rent that mill to have it turned into veneer. Okay?
Do they have different issues from woods?
Oh, big time. Like that's a whole, like everything that, like the whole learning curve of what we do, the veneer guys are even bigger problems and more of a learning curve. It's like, you mean, they could write a book about all the learning they've done to produce veneer. And the people that I've worked with, it's like very, well, it's their private information, their experiences, and they actually keep records of, like, when they make veneer, they usually cook the logs in steam. And every species, they cook the logs for a different period of time, and then they can change like blade angle and all different sorts of stuff that can kind of. And then once they cut the veneer, then they have to dry the veneer, and depending on how much heat they introduce, and how long, like they get different results. And yeah, and I mean the investment is huge. So. And that's the veneer world. In their world, they say the profits can be very, very large, but the losses can also be very, very large. It's either a win or it's a loss in the veneer world, and they do lose a lot too.
So your new building for display, is that going to include some veneers?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're pretty excited, and we have plans that with the new building that we definitely want to display more veneer. We want to display more of the smaller sort of stuff. And we also want to start offering kind of the go-to plywoods that you might use as a cabinet maker or furniture maker. We don't really want to get into the plywood business, but we at least want to have the basics, like the ones that I'd always be using, the sort of deal that most people would.
Real pretty.
Yeah, you're kind of your go-to sort of stuff. And then we also plan to sell kind of your nuts and bolts sort of woodworking supplies. The stuff that I use on my day-to-day. The main glues that you might always be using, the main finishes that we like to use, and then kind of not getting into cheap sort of tools, but like the really high-end sort of stuff.
I missed it. When's that opening?
We don't have a date. It's going to be sometime next year. We're taking our time and doing it right. And the stuff that can be done fast has happened, and now it's going to slow down a little bit because we're about to get into the cool custom stuff, and that's going to take a little while because we're doing most of it in-house. So, see the sawmill building, and then you can cut, or you want to cut?
It's up to you.
You're looking at me like I'm taking too much time. I'm sure they want to see the big saw. Go for it. Maybe you want to tell them about the big saw.
No, I'm not good at talking.
This is Ike, by the way. Ike is can't say enough about this man, but he's an amazing sawyer, and he's the jack of all trades. He wears a lot of hats here, and but the main hat he wears is he makes my dreams come true. When I buy these logs and I say, Ike, I want them cut this way, and then I don't sit there and run the saw all day. He makes sure whatever I have gets cut the right way. And then he also makes sure it gets dried the right way. So he's
even certified in kilogram.
Yep. So he handles the whole process of getting the wood from the point where you can't use it to the point where you can use it. So he's going to give you the sawmill instruction on this saw. But quickly, I feel like it wouldn't be the full tour if I didn't show you the last bit. Budget and cut wood with them like almost anywhere in the world fairly easily. But chainsaw mills create a lot of sawdust and are very, very inaccurate. And we had a custom built chainsaw mill that we built here in-house. And we used it for a lot of big logs we had for the first 15 years of when we came here to Oxford. But then we bought a property in Nicaragua, and in Nicaragua, everything there has to be cut before it leaves Nicaragua. It's a law within the country. And it's one of the reasons we set up a sawmill in Nicaragua, so that we could do what we want to do, which is be able to cut logs the way we cut logs. So we partnered up with a guy where we set up a sawmill where we could custom cut in Nicaragua. Well, same thing that always happens here is we found logs down there that we liked that were bigger than what he could cut. And he had some rosewood logs that were like 7 feet wide that needed to be cut. We couldn't ship them, and we didn't want to turn them into 20-inch wide boards, so we shipped our chainsaw mill from Nicaragua from here to Nicaragua, and then we didn't have a 9-foot chainsaw mill anymore. And then my guys told me, I was like, well, let's build another chainsaw mill. And if you've ever seen a chainsaw mill operate, like we did an open house, our very first open house, we cut a very special walnut tree. It was the biggest English walnut in the state of Pennsylvania when it finally came down. Longwood Gardens has a program where they track the biggest trees, and some homeowner needed this tree to come down, so we ended up with it. And we got it, and we did an event to celebrate this tree and cut it, and we did it on the chainsaw mill. Well, if you would have came to that event, you probably would have stayed for about 5 minutes and turned around and went home, because if you watch a chainsaw mill run, it's like watching paint dry. You know, each cut takes on that tree it took like an hour just to make one cut. This mill, it can do like something, if it could cut 9 feet wide, it could do that probably about a minute. And that one about the same. And my guys told me I wanted to build a chainsaw mill because, you know, I could probably do it for like $40,000, $50,000. And it would work. We only get a few logs like that every once in a while to make it worthwhile to do. So it doesn't make sense to make a big investment for when you're in seeing. You can just imagine, you know, how many 9 foot logs are out there, right? And who's buying them too. I mean, we haven't even got into that. And all the guys here, they basically like revolted against me. They're like, we're not ever building a chainsaw mill ever again. We're ever cutting with a chainsaw mill ever again. And so that's when we ended up with that.
What powers that chainsaw mill?
Well, the people that are doing it on the cheap will usually use a chainsaw. Right? Like an 088, like Steel's like biggest saw.
You had one back here. Yeah, it's an 88.
He could tell me what I don't know what Steel's biggest is.
It's still the biggest.
And we have like 3 or 4 088s, and somewhere around here we have the bars hanging up on the wall of fame. Like we have a 9-foot bar here. It's still here that you can see. And there might be like a 7-foot bar back there.
Is that what you're talking about? That's what powering it as a regular chainsaw?
Well, that's how most people do it.
Right, but
and like if you buy a Lucas mill, like if you ever wanted to do it yourself, go buy a Lucas mill. They're kind of like the main brand out there, and they do it with a chainsaw head. Now I think they have a motor you can put to it.
They are gasoline powered.
Our guys, we had a chainsaw, and we still do because they set it up the same way in Nicaragua. Ours was on steroids. We powered it off our Caterpillar out there.
Now that's what I'm
hydraulic. Yeah, we put hydraulic attachments.
And it's still take an hour.
Take the cat. Yeah, I mean, you should have seen how that thing would spin around. It was scary. Yeah. It was like it
takes a long time.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, but we had the cat power.
Yeah,
that was the power end. So big difference in the chainsaw motors.
Yeah.
So. That's great. Before we get there, what you're looking at is kind of the machines you need to kind of mill out wood to get to the point where you can create billets to resaw it into guitar parts, or get it to a size like rough out really for any use. But we mainly use all these machines here mainly for dealing with guitar parts.
For Martins?
We do a lot of them go to Martin. We work with a lot of different people. You name the guitar company, and we work with them at one point or another. Some of them we don't work with a whole lot, but the big boys in the country are Martin, Gibson, Taylor, and Fender. And Martin and Gibson, we do a lot of work. We do a little bit with Fender, but they just don't make very high-end guitars, so we don't really, they shouldn't be buying wood from us in the first place. And Taylor, we don't do a whole lot with them, mainly out of respect for somebody like Martin, because if we have something really, really nice, Martin was like one of our first really good guitar customers, and one of the people that really pushed us into it, that they still get like my first call if I have something that I think they might be interested in. Like I'm not the sort of guy that is ever going to forget who really put us into the business, and if Martin has a use for it, I think I have something that Martin would have bought from me in the past, I'll give him a call about it. And out of respect to them, I don't give Taylor those sorts of phone calls. Now, if Taylor gives me a phone call, I got to answer any phone call if anybody calls me. So, but we work with about everybody.
Thank you.
Do you heat with your sawdust?
What's that?
Do you heat with your sawdust?
We send it to people that do that, and we also send a lot of our sawdust gets taken by the local army. But we do not heat here with our sawdust. But we have somebody who takes it to make pellets,
Right.
where it would be used to
Well, thank you.
Just quickly, this is, and if you guys have any questions about any of this, you want to flag me down later, go for it. This is an interesting machine. I like to call this the wood eater. I'm sure a lot of you guys have joiners and planers in your shop. I mean, if you're going to build furniture, that's kind of where it all begins. Anybody here have a joiner or planer that's over 12 inches here in this group? No? Okay.
Planer.
Planer? Yep, planer. Well, we have a lot of really nice joiners and planers, but this is the only machine that we have. Well, that's not true. Sorry, let me take a step back. We have two machines that are both a joiner and a planer in the same go. We have that guy over there, which actually does all four sides at once. But it's only eating a little bit of wood versus this wood eater. This one will do 36 inches joining and planing at the same time. So,
You
Just-
run slabs through that, or
yeah, if they're, well, we have a lot of slabs that are bigger than 36 inches.
Yeah.
And then on that, we have the milling machine out there I showed you.
Yeah.
And then probably the fanciest machine in this shop is that sander there.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think that when the day that we bought that, but if I had that 20 years earlier, I probably could have reclaimed about 10,000 hours of my life on sanding.
But
And it was actually like it was like a bittersweet day, like I was kind of pissed, but also happy. I was like pissed that I didn't have it 20 years earlier.
It existed 20 years
But happy that I finally got it, because in that machine, it has 4 sandpaper heads, and I can go from like 80 grit all the way to 220 grit in one pass.
no,
Pretty nice thing to
how
have.
wide is that?
And we can do 54 inches wide. So, nice machine to
Even sharpening like anything
They
else?
do. Yeah, and it has a sharpener. You can see there's one of them.
Oh,
There's
right
another one.
on it.
There's another one where it comes over to here, and then this whole head actually pulls out. It's serious.
I bet.
It's serious.
That's how old is that machine?
Like 54. So we, we always try to buy the best. And a lot of the stuff in this shop I consider to be the best of the best. And you want to talk the best of the best, Old American's tough to beat. And you'll see like those band saws, those are our Navy saws. That's what helped build our Navy. Those saws date back to the 40s and the 50s.
The motors.
And you can't buy a band saw now that as good as those saws. Those are the best, in my opinion.
Do the lights dim when you hit the turn on?
No, they did on that one. This one. We're getting to this one. These just have modest 10 horsepower motors,
That's mine.
but they're like 3,000 pound ship anchors. There's no vibrator. You can put a nickel up on edge and it's not going to fall over while that saw is running. And they just don't make saws like that anymore. Italians are really good at sanders. So we really like that Viet. Winding is basically the best when it comes to molding machines. That's German made. And it's usually a combination of, if you want to get the best stuff, you need to go Old American. And there's some good New American too. We own some Northfields. Northfield's still making good machines. And then the Germans they're the Germans. So. And then it brings us to this stuff. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Or at least not the Philadelphia Navy Yard anymore, but I'm sure you all, a lot of this group remembers driving up I-95 and seeing the aircraft carriers parked out there on the Delaware River. Well, don't quote me on this, but around 2000, they shut that down, and they auctioned off a lot of their assets, and we were lucky enough to buy the bandsaw that was at that Navy Yard. It's a Fayette. You can see the patent number at 1904. That's the blade up top. Give you an idea of sense of scale. approximately 180 horsepower electric motor. Somewhere in that ballpark.
It's all 440 here.
Not all, well, 480.
480. So okay.
We do have some stuff where we have to put transformers together. Like we have some German stuff that's like 380, and we have some 230. We have a lot of 230 machines.
Right.
Carriage is all hydraulically driven, so we can take a log, and I decide that log needs to be spun around 180 degrees. Turned 180 degrees. We're turned 40 degrees. We're tapered 7 inches. We can do that all from this control booth right here, with the operator not even getting out of that booth to do so, which is an amazing thing. Because if you watch how we operate that mill out there, if I say, "Ike, I want you to move that log 12 inches for me," he goes and grabs a big machine, he lifts it up, he has to cut a bunch of shims, put the shims under the log, and then re-put the log back down the shims to get it to lift 12 inches. Or if I say, "Oh, I don't like it the way it sits there, let's move it 10 degrees. He's got to spin it by hand. With this machine, he can do all that without even getting out of the booth. Now, we designed and built that here in-house. One of the guys, Steve Byler, did all that. But that's the beauty of this machine. For custom cutting, it was designed for, the Navy Yard had it for high production, and then when we got our hands on it, we modified it for custom cutting. And we basically can manipulate a log up to 8 feet in diameter and 25 feet long and move it to whatever orientation that we want to do so. Lots of times, what we use it for now, which is a bit of a scary process, is I will take a 5-foot diameter spruce log and bring it through this mill and try to split it right down the mill. It's the only saw on this property that can do that. Without getting a chainsaw. You can imagine take a 40-foot log, 5 feet wide, get a chainsaw and try to split that by hand. How long that's going to take you, right? I'll see you next week. But this mill can do that like a matter of 45 seconds. But what he has to do is this carriage will drive through the mill, and you can see the pulley there, which is a different motor. There's like 4 or 5 different motors that control the whole process. He cuts through the log almost all the way through, because he doesn't want to go all the way through, because you can imagine if a 25-foot log 5 feet wide just fell off this side, we're not able to catch that. So he cuts and leaves about 12 inches still intact, and then he pulls it back. And then we take a chainsaw and we split off that 12 inches. Or there's a log turner in the pit there. He'll take the log turner, give the log a few punches, and sometimes the log, if he gets it just right, he doesn't have to chainsaw. He just punches with the log turner a couple times, and the log splits out. If we're cutting boards, which we still do that on this mill as well, it's like I said, there's a lot of tools in the toolbox. Sometimes this is the perfect tool for cutting slabs. And for the first, from 97 till 2015, almost all the slabs are cut on this mill. Now they're not. We catch the slabs at this end, and then this crane here, if they're really big slabs, and you can imagine what some of these slabs could weigh when they're soaking wet green, is we have a vacuum hoist up top that we can put onto that crane, that jib crane there. And that jib crane, it came rated to us at 2,000 pounds as far as picking slabs up with vacuum technology. And we actually, at one point, we found that it could pick up more than that, but we had a Babinga slab where it broke the vacuum. The vacuum didn't let go. The weld let go on the vacuum. And it just shows you how powerful that vacuum is. So what we did is we put brackets on there with steel that were twice the thickness. And now I would say it's probably rated out to 4,000 pounds.
Field up right this.
Field up right now.
When you bought this at auction, you must have paid more to have the thing moved than you would have.
So my dad always maintained that if he knew what the thing was going to cost him, it would never would have happened. At auction, I forget what the price was that he got, but it was. Now looking back on it, was a steal. I think we paid like $50,000 or something like that. Right.
But to move,
And, you know, we had to take it down and had to move it. That was all on us, not them. That was part of the auction price. And we figured, without even getting to that, we bought it, and then we had this, you know, after the barn, we built that building, and then we built this building. And the reason we built this building was because of this mill. Without getting into what this building cost, we figured that when it was all said and done, like we probably spent like $750,000 getting this machine up and running. And like my dad said, like if he would have known that, like at the auction that day, that it was going to cost him $750,000, they would have never happened. Which is the case now. We have it happen. Now we're getting smart. We understand things like far as there's the trickle down of. You know, we're talking about one of the gentlemen, the highly volatile saw in the back. Anybody see the resaw and the guitar? Ben described it as highly volatile because that was the way it was described to me by the manufacturer. And you got to be careful when you're shopping machinery. That machine cost us like $150,000. We got it used. It would have cost us like $400,000 new.
Are there many of these in the country?
I've heard that there's a few out there. The Navy had like 15 of them, I think. There was one down. I think somebody told me there's one still in Norfolk. But to the highly volatile machine, same deal. You buy a machine for $150,000. But now we know. Now you got to ask, okay, do we have enough electric? Because if you don't have the electric power, you can figure what the electric costs to get this thing set up. It's like, all right, we know the electric's going to cost us a lot of money. All right, do we need to pour concrete footers?
Nope.
Concrete's going to cost a lot of money.
It's up to money.
This building with guitars, we learned about the sander. We weren't smart on that. We bought the sander, but didn't realize that we didn't have enough dust in the building, dust collection in the building. That we're going to have to upgrade our dust collector and spend $150,000 to upgrade our dust collector. So now we know you got to ask what's the dust requirements. And then you got air, building. I think I got it. Well, maybe if it's used, you better figure out. You know, you're going to have some check over refurbishing the machine. So, anyways, we've now learned that sometimes be careful when you look at the price that there might be a lot that falls after.
Can you get parts?
No, we fabricate. So this thing came with Babbitt bearings.
Oh, jeez. He does that.
Well, the Babbitt bearings went. So we got lucky. Stroudsburg Railroad Museum, they had the railroad presses there. They could press bearings out.
They did it for you.
They did it for us.
Yeah, right.
Yep, they pressed the bearings out. We replaced. We didn't go back to Babbitt bearings. I'll tell you that. But we pressed the bearings out, put new bearings.
Yeah, do you have bronze bushings for real bearings?
All bearings. I think they're real bearings, but I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate. And then we're lucky too. The blades. That's a big part of it. We haven't talked about that yet. Those blades need to be resharpened every 6 hours.
And every 6 hours?
Generally. Sometimes, like we've had logs on here. We had a wallaby log once where we dull a blade halfway through the cut. It was so hard. That's the advantage of that big mill out there. We can run carbide instead of stellite here. And carbide's much. Plus, our biggest enemy is friction on this thing. You're in a 5 foot wide cut.
Yeah.
So you're creating a lot of friction, and these blades, if they get too hot, they lose their temper, and they loosen up. And you can imagine if you have a blade that big and it stretches, it's on that wheel.
So these are
Not good.
These essentially are steel tubes, so you resharpen them.
We resharpen. Yeah, you can resharpen carbide
You
too.
send them out to resharpen.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Is we're lucky the people that make our blades are in York County. So what we do is, I don't know the exact number, but we have like 20 blades, somewhere in that ballpark, 15 to 20, and we rotate. Like they always have like 5 or 6 of our blades, and then we keep blades here. And then when all the blades here get dull, we take a truck, we drive all the dull blades up to York. They have a whole package of resharpened blades for us. They come back, and we keep rotating like that. Occasionally we hit stuff that shouldn't be in logs, like concrete, steel, and like there's no resharpening. you just throw them out. You have to buy a new blade. One time we had Mir Nakashima here. I don't know if you know who that is, but Nakashimas are a very famous furniture company. We were cutting koa that had lava rocks in it.
Oh,
And Mir really liked this koa root that I had, and she wanted to see it all cut up. And we like her quite a bit, and she does really nice work and all that. That we're like, all right, we're just going to keep going. We destroyed like 5 blades that day, and we figured like at that time I think the blades were like $2,500 a piece. I couldn't even tell you what they cost now.
There are back teeth on that bear saw.
Correct.
That means you can't have a thrust bearing. How do you keep the blade from falling off the wheel with the force of the log going through it?
On the back cut?
Yeah, well, no, as you cut it. I mean, a smaller bandsaw has a thrust bearing. The blade will run against,
Yeah.
but they can't have a thrust bearing.
No thrust bearing. No.
Just tension.
Just tension.
that good.
15,000.
I just realized that.
15,000 pounds of tension, or something like that.
So it's cutting.
And it's all about how fast you cut.
Yeah.
I could tell you stories.
How long does it take to do a blade change?
Not that long, actually. 30 minutes.
Really?
These guys are, I mean, it's very simple. The hood comes up, down off the hydraulic cylinder there, off the push of a button. His tension is right here. He releases the tension on the wheels. There's a board over here on the left side. You lift the board out of there. And there's a big, like 10-foot deep pit in here. And they just, one guy on one side, one guy on the other side, they lift the blade up off the wheel, get the clear to the left where it drops into the pit, and they just wheel it. They just roll it right out the back. It's very simple, actually.
Is there any? So you have a casualty from the guy.
Yeah.
He got caught in the bell.
These guys around here, they have a pretty good sense of humor.
That's great.
Never a dull moment.
Jeez.
All right, I've definitely talked way too long.
It was great.
Yeah.
You are the best. Thank you.
No worries. It's not over yet. If you're curious to see how logs are cut, we're gonna walk outside and I'm gonna turn it over to Ike, and he's gonna show you the sawing process.
Hey, thank you.
All right, no worries. Thank you all.
Convention they all go to, the planets are about they all all those from
Well, you tell the story. Yeah. Well, I had no involvement in all that.
go Twitter, tweet out.
How many of you know Thomas Edison? Of Thomas Edison?
Didn't know him personally.
Yeah, not personally, but of. Where was his birthplace?
Jersey. New Jersey.
Ohio.
Yeah, used to be part of New Jersey.
I think he might have lived in New
You
Jersey.
sure about this?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
On the internet. He read that on the internet.
This tree grew at Thomas Edison's birthplace.
Ooh,
There you have it. Got a little bit of a story, I guess. A little bit of history.
what kind is it?
Black walnut.
Bit tiny.
All right, let's get at
So
it.
was it cut down or did it die?
I think it was still live when they took it down.
Took it down?
Yeah.
The feed tree split.
Yeah.
So that needed.
Yeah, Rick bought a truck. Rick showed up all of a sudden one day and tractor trailer pulled in with logs. I'm like, what's up?
Yeah, we had no involvement with having any say in that tree being cut down. One day somebody called and said, "We have a tree from Thomas Edison's property. You want to buy it?"
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. As a story, we like stories.
You would see it. Fine, wait.
You got your help?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna take a big chunk off and then do one more slab just to get down into the
Get your help.
Sheriff water, thank you.
shit.
Any more questions while we're waiting?
Yeah, I was in the middle. Kids and find and you have a log on and never is on conceal.
Well, that's a great question because that's a huge concern. Look, with this smaller blade, we find that in the speed it operates, that it generally doesn't bind, but it has. And that's usually because of the tension within the tree, which is every tree is different. And if we feel like it's we have a problem tree where it is starting to bind us a little bit, we'll drive chainsaw wedges into it as we go to keep it from to create the space where we're binding off.
I have a question.
But I mean, you'll see lots of times. One of the things we like about this mill is once it gets the log set up properly, is instead of after every cut taking the slab off the mill, he'll cut like 5 slabs in a row. Just go cut one, come back, cut one, go back, cut one, and instead of stopping and taking them off, he'll just keep cutting, and then after he has 5 or 6, then he'll take them all off at once. Just more efficient that way. And the weight doesn't seem to have any effect on binding up the blade. But that's the difference of, we're running, I think, 1.5 inches width blades, somewhere in there, versus, that's like a 9 or 10 inch wide blade where you have a lot more friction and it does want to bind. With chainsaw, part of it's the kerf, like that kerf on there is like a 16th.
Wow.
Didn't find any light bulbs. Disappointment. Hey, put that over your head.
Are you going to resaw put it back up there next week?
You're too young for that. Let it go. Those are brooms. You want this anymore? Let's try it. No. Go park it. See where the electrical comes out of the side? That's the whole generator. So there we're getting right close to the center of the tree. And that crack is down the middle, right here. That's like the center of the tree. Yeah. Sure. $3. But that'll save me from bending down one time and picking it up.
Now I can say I have a Edison.
I was going to say, if it was in the Edison gift shop, it'd be
Yeah, now you told me.
You know, they could actually make that because all that ink would sell out. But it's set up, wood set up pretty good on the outside.